Welcome back to CVM Live. It's now time for our major stories in detail. Ronald Thwaites is suggesting that the vote for the acts to amend the Banking Act of Jamaica will be a litmus test for his fellow parliamentarians as to whether or not they have the interest of the average citizen at heart. CVM Live's Joel Croskill reports.
Consumer protection is the theme surrounding the Act to amend the Bank of Jamaica Act, heard in Parliament today. And Member of Parliament Ronald Thwaites was categorical in his assessment of the importance of the legislation.
The vote on this bill is going to determine which members of this House are willing to act decisively on the part of the ordinary people of Jamaica who are or not, and who are not able to find any kind of recourse other than this in this kind of legislation. And the member who has proposed it deserves the unstinting praise of the House and of the people of Jamaica.
Mark Golding spoke of a number of important aspects of the bill that will lead to greater consumer protections.
Another important provision is in paragraph E, which requires the lending institution, the deposit-taking institution, to keep the language in their agreements with customers simple and clear, and ensure that key terms are clearly identified and defined for their customers' attention. And those key terms include things like rates, fees, payment dates, and so on. Plain and simple terms. When one looks at the fine print in most financial contracts, it is often in legalese of the highest order, which the average person would struggle to understand.
Meanwhile, Ronald Thwaites questioned the burden of loans disbursed by banking institutions, comparing the issuance of loans for cars to that of small and micro-sized businesses. Joel Croskill, CVM Live.
President of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, Larry Watson, says renaming the state of emergency as enhanced security measures will not change what it is. CVM Live's Khadija Thomas has more.
Speaking with CVM Live on Tuesday, Watson says the announcement of the state of emergency already has international repercussions. So there is cause for concern in the tourism sector.
I think in the short term we have to get the gangs under control, and whereas crime plans have been tabled, you know, it is a complex and difficult problem, but I think that we have reached a stage, and the country now, the government, and all Jamaicans as a whole has a resolve to try and bring this monster under control.
He says one of the past presidents of the JCC, James Moss Solomon, was of the view that there is an attempted hijacking of the state by criminal gangs.
What he was saying in the article is that if we allow crime to go unabated, and that crime has an income source independent of normal income sources, there is a possibility that criminals and criminality can take over the state. I think in our recent past, one can make reference to, say, Tivoli Gardens, and we had to call a state of emergency to bring, you know, an area of Jamaica under control.
Watson says the influx of illegal guns into Jamaica has become a major issue. He adds that the business sector has forged a national consensus in developing a strategic plan to handle crime.
It is getting all concerned parties together, all stakeholders together, in addition to our international partners. And the purpose of this summit is to try and find a way to get out, to reduce crime. The objective is to reduce crime to a significantly lower level than it is today.
Khadija Thomas, CVM Live.
Senator Donna Scott Motley believes Prime Minister Andrew Holness has placed himself above the judiciary as a result of the temporary appointment of Acting Chief Justice Brian Sykes and the Prime Minister's evaluation of his performance. CVM Live's Joel Croskill has that report.
There was a spirited debate between opposition spokesperson on justice Senator Donna Scott Motley and Attorney General Marlene Malahoo Fort on CVM Live on the subject of the acting appointment of the Chief Justice Brian Sykes.
Let me address the issue of the allegation of unconstitutionality. the power to make the kind of appointment that was made is expressly provided for in Section 99(1) of the Constitution. It provides that if the office of Chief Justice is vacant, then until a person has been appointed to that office and assumes its functions, they shall be performed by such other person qualified for appointment as a judge of the Supreme Court, and the qualification is set out under Section 98(3) of the said Constitution.
Senator Scott Motley, however, applied a different interpretation to Section 99(1).
Section 99(1) applies in a circumstance where there is an unexpected vacancy. That is to say, if the Chief Justice takes ill, she or he is found guilty of misconduct, she is unable to perform her duties. In that case, of course it would be obvious that we would have to have an acting appointment. And we do have acting appointments. For example, when the Chief Justice goes on vacation.
Senator Scott Motley expressed concern with the Prime Minister's handling of the appointment and his own role as a probation officer to the acting Chief Justice.
I would say that he's carrying out a disturbing political function. Let me explain why. He has set no time frame for his evaluation. It is clear from what he has said that the evaluation resides in him. We don't know on what basis the Chief Justice will be judged by him, because he has appointed himself above the judiciary.
The Attorney General, however, sought to calm those allegations, coming to the defense of the Prime Minister.
Just to say that I do appreciate, and I don't think it is lost on Prime Minister Holness or the administration, that persons will be concerned to preserve the independence of the judiciary, and the administration is concerned and has every intention of preserving the independence of the judiciary.
Joel Crossgill, CVM Live.
Opposition spokesman on tourism, Dr. Wickham McNeil, says referring to the state of emergency as enhanced security measures will not change international perception. CVM Live's Nicole Wilson picks up on that story.
Recently, Security Minister Robert Montague said the state of public emergency in Montego Bay should be referred to as enhanced security measures in order to protect the tourism product. However, opposition spokesman on tourism Dr. Wickham McNeil says this rebranding may play out contrary to the minister's expectations.
All that would do is damage your credibility, because already your partners in the industry, persons across the world, know that there's a state of emergency in place, and changing the name but not changing actually what you do would only damage your credibility, and I don't think that it would have the positive effect that I suspect that they would want to get out of it.
Dr. McNeil says that some problems currently being experienced could have been avoided with better planning.
And it was first announced, the state of emergency, that the minister, certainly as a member of cabinet, would have known, and there was a criticism that in the very early hours that our persons in the various markets, whether it is the partners and certainly the tourist board representatives in those areas, very early should have been notified.
He reiterated the opposition's support for the state of emergency, but indicated that things could have been done differently.
And secondly, at that point in time, they could have, in sending in those troops, sending in the police, doing all the things they have done, they could have selected certain areas and called it the zones of special operations, or had more zones, or extended the limit of the zones, and not called it a state of emergency.
Dr. McNeil says the fallout from the state of emergency will not be immediate. Nicole Wilson, CVM Live.
Police in Oracabessa say the driver of the motorcycle that hit down an elderly woman and resulted in her being mowed down by two other vehicles is now on the run. Nicholas spoke with the investigating officer concerning the tragedy on Sunday.
Although it is widely held that it is appointed once unto every man to die, residents in Stewarttown and specifically the Fernandez Garden area who knew 78-year-old Gaffett Miller say her death seemed like more than once, given the nature of the tragedy.
She was crossing the road across from the barber shop right there when the bike came from that intersection down that side and hit her into the back of a motor car. So the bike man seemed to have sped off, and then two cars coming from that same intersection come and run over her.
A retired street sweeper, Miller met her demise on the very streets she cleaned for years in her community in St. Mary on Sunday at about 6:30 p.m. Corporal A. Davis of the Motor Traffic Section at the Oracabessa Police Station is investigating the matter and has advised that immediately after the deadly accident, the driver of the motorcycle fled the scene along with the second motorist who ran over the woman. The motorcycle was left on the scene. The roadway, which is heavily traversed, was said to be wet at the time of the accident and is believed to have posed a challenge to the speeding motorcyclist who lost control and hit the senior citizen. Of the three vehicles making contact with Miller, only the third stopped. CVM Live understands the area where the incident happened has had a reputation for violence, especially in such cases, and given this fact, the motorists, often fearing for their own lives, would instead opt to stop at the Prospect Police Station. The tragedy has left a family and a community in mourning, even as they point to a lack of proper lighting in the area, something that stood out in the gloomy Sunday evening. Nika Lewis, CVM Live.
One of the brightest minds in local football weighs in tonight on our CVM probe, youth football. Here's Wayne Walker.
Andrew Edwards is seen in local football circles as an intellect, but also one of the most astute coaches around. Yet to really test his ability at coaching senior men, Edwards has more than distinguished himself at the junior levels, both at high school and the national. In fact, he came within a whisker of taking Jamaica to the Under-17 World Cup 3 years ago, so there are few more qualified than him to weigh in on this subject. 7 years ago, he put together a document and presented it to the local football hierarchy on the approach he thinks the country's youth football should take.
The government came up with this program called School Sports Infrastructure Development Program in schools, and I think we are seeing some fruits from that. My idea then and now is that schools have shown over the years the capacity to develop infrastructure with minimal resources and maintain those infrastructure. So I thought that based on what we are seeing in the communities where the facilities are not being maintained and utilizing the best interests of the country and the communities, that it was best for these monies to be spent in the schools.
Edwards is currently head coach at Manchester High, and he says one of the reasons for the current stagnation in the local game came as a result of, ironically, the unorthodox way in which the country qualified for the 1998 World Cup.
Right now, as a nation, we are pretty much stuck on what we did in 1998. And the truth be told, what we did in 1998, if I could paraphrase Professor René Simoes, we erected a roof without having a foundation. And as a consequence, we have not been able to get even close to qualifying for another Senior World Cup. We have managed to qualify for another Under-17 World Cup since that golden era, so to speak.
Edwards, who spent 6 months in Germany doing high-level football courses a few years ago, is under no illusion that banking on the Under-17s is the best way to go, but he also thinks we're missing a bigger picture.
It is dismal that we have not recognized that the Under-17 World Cup is probably our very best bet for qualifying for the World Cup on a consistent basis, and make it a priority, a high priority actually. Recently I heard the new director of football, one of my mentors, Coach Wendell Downswell, saying that would be an agenda item for us to try and qualify for every Under-17 World Cup going forward.
Having said all he has said, this is his closing argument.
Our football needs a restructuring, certainly at the club level. What we have now just won't work. We have on record anywhere from 430 to 700 clubs in this country at different given times, depending on which statistics you use, and that just don't make any sense.
Tomorrow, you'll hear from Craig Butler, operator of the Phoenix Academy. For CVM Probes, I'm Wayne Walker.
Time now for our regional and international news with our reporter, Nicoy Wilson.
Thanks, Richard. Now for news in the region. In Antigua, the Eastern Caribbean Civil Aviation Authority, ECCAA, has been slapped with a US $1.2 billion lawsuit. The suit was filed by pilot Grace Norman, who is the manager and sole owner of Antigua Flight Training Center and the co-owner of the Norman Aviation Flight Training Academy. The damages being sought are for 3 financially crippling decisions the regulatory body handed down against the businesses over a 9-year period. And in Antigua, fires and motor vehicle collisions top the list of incidents requiring the attention of emergency responders of the St. Lucia Fire Service on the weekend. HTN St. Lucia has more.
As reported by Jermaine Williams, station officer attached to the Fire Service headquarters, the SLFS responded to 86 emergency calls, along with 3 fire calls for the weekends commencing Friday, February 2nd to Monday, the 5th. First responders were also kept busy with a number of road collisions.
In the north of the island, we responded to a total of 48 emergency calls, which included a total of 5 motor vehicle accidents, one of which was fatal. There was also a near-drowning incident of a 2-year-old male at the Pigeon Island beach. In the south, there were a total of 38 ambulance responses, and 2 persons were dead on arrival after our units got on scene.
For years, the St. Lucia Fire Service has been hampered by resource constraints, but the station officers stressed that the dead on arrivals recorded on the weekend were not attributable to response time or operational challenges by the department.
And in news further overseas, a strong earthquake in Taiwan has killed at least 2 people and injured more than 100 others. The powerful 6.4 magnitude tremor struck about 20 kilometers off the island's east coast. Officials say that rescuers are trying to free people from a partially collapsed hotel and residential building. Photographs show tilting and collapsed high-rise buildings, scattered debris, and extensive damage to roads in the area. The lower basement and ground floor of a 10-story Marshall Hotel have given way, and at least 3 members of staff are thought to be stuck inside. The earthquake happened on the 2nd anniversary of a 6.4 magnitude tremor that killed 117 people. That's it for regional and international news. I am Nicole Wilson. Back to you, Richard.
Thanks very much, Nicole. Those were our major stories this evening. News Live in 5 will come your way later on in the program with Joel Croskett.